In today's Leeds news, new finance models Leeds impact, Ampadu at risk of ban, Rangers sackings not linked to the 49ers, and Rumour mill clarification on Conor Gallagher. Hey folks, welcome to the Leeds View, Tuesday the 25th of November with your Leeds United news. Hope your week is going well so far. There's a little bit of stuff to get stuck into when it's pretty light on the ground. News-wise, there's always a sexy football finance story floating around, and we'll give you some detail on the new finance model's impact on Leeds United. The rumour mill stuff we'll leave to the end of the video. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, so if you're interested in that, it's more of a clarification on a link than anything else, but it is coming out from a pretty credible source as well. So that's at the end of the video if you want that detail. We'll have the podcast tonight at 7 o'clock. Myself, Paul and Jerry having a little bit of look at the current Leeds United situation and ahead to the weekend's game against Man City, and also Chelsea coming up following that one pretty quickly as well. But we'll start off today on the new football finance model and its impact on Leeds United. Last week, the Premier League clubs voted to replace the current PSR financing model with a brand new model called the Squad Cost Ratio Model, or SCR. So out goes PSR and in comes SCR. Basics of this mean that from next season, clubs that are not playing in European competition will be allowed to spend 85% of their revenue on players and managers' wages, transfer fees and agent fees included. Sides who are competing in Europe will have to stick to the 70% of their revenue model that's based on the UEFA model, but they would still have significantly more cash coming in as a result of playing in Europe, so it still gives them a significant financial advantage. A bit more detail has come out on this model now that football finance experts have started to digest this, and also a new statement from the Premier League that gives a little bit more detail into an additional spend that clubs will be allowed to use, as well as potential penalties if they do overspend. The Premier League statement on this said the following. Following extensive consultation, clubs agreed to bring in the squad cost ratio and sustainability and systematic resilience proposal. SCR will regulate clubs' on-pitch spending to 85% of their football revenue and net profit loss on player sales. Clubs will have a multi-year allowance of 30% that they can use to spend in excess of the 85%. Utilising this, though, will incur a levy, and once that allowance has been exhausted, they will need to comply with the 85% or face sporting sanctions. There is an additional 30% there that you can spend. It might help promoted sides to try and bridge the gap a little bit between sides, but it will be open to everybody else, and it is a one chance option to use. The Premier League say that rules are intended to promote opportunities for clubs to aspire to greater success, but also bring the club closer to the UEFA squad cost ratio model that is currently in place there. But as I say, there is no doubt that this still will benefit the traditional top six clubs in the Premier League more than anybody else. From a Leeds United perspective, if they were open to incurring that levy, it would give them that extra 30% to spend, and it would possibly close the gap on some sides within the Premier League, but it would definitely remove the handcuffs that Leeds United currently have for those 2 years that they spent in the Championship. The new system is said to have a transparent in-season monitoring to protect against sporting underperformances. So, from a Leeds United's perspective, the current set of finances aren't released for the 24-25 season. They don't come out until January. But based on the 23-24 ones, with the additional revenue added to that of what you get for just coming into the Premier League, Leeds' revenue will be in and around £274 million per year. But again, that's very much just on the basics of what you get for getting into the Premier League, and a very rough estimate. But that places Leeds United in and around 11th in the Premier League revenue table. However, there's more. From a spending perspective, it would mean that Leeds have a potential spend of in and around 219 million, but that is not just transfer fees. That includes players' wages, managers' wages and agent fees as well. If you add in the additional 30%, it brings up to around about 284 million, but again, that 30% is supposed to be spread ideally over a 3-year period. As I say, these are all very rough estimates and back of a piece of cardboard mathematics being done here, but it does give us a basic understanding of where it will sit Leeds United. We will try and speak to some football finance experts and get an exact kind of, well, closer estimate on what it will mean for Leeds United. They can have a better understanding of how much money Leeds have brought in even the current cycle, so we can get an estimate of where Leeds United will sit revenue-wise versus other sides in the Premier League. But that 2-year Championship block of Leeds being calculated down because of that, at least that could potentially go away. But Leeds will need to stay in the Premier League to at least have any chance of benefit from this. Let's move on. Let's talk about Ethan Ampadu treading a line Leeds United skipper Ethan Ampadu showed signs of being back to his best in the first half against Aston Villa at the weekend. After recent performances where his defensive tracking probably hasn't been where it needs to be at Premier League level, and over a couple of games he's been guilty of not tracking runners into the Leeds United penalty area. But when he is at his absolute best, which he definitely looked like he was in the first half against Villa, he's a vital part of that Leeds United midfield. But he's treading a line right now heading into the Manchester City game. Anton Stack, as we know, will miss that game due to concussion protocols, and Leeds will hope to have him back for the midweek game against Chelsea, because if he's not, and Ethan Ampadu picks up a yellow card against Man City, Leeds could be without two central midfielders for that Chelsea game. And with the tough run of fixtures that Leeds are coming up, they need every single player available that they can possibly have. If Ampadu picks up a yellow card in any of his next 7 games, he will receive an automatic 1-game ban from the Premier League, which feels like it'd be very hard to avoid for Ampadu, but the hope is he can at least avoid it until Leeds have their full complement of midfield options back and available for them, and lessen that impact a little bit if they can. But it's not going to be an easy run for Ethan Ampadu. He's a physical player. He likes his tackles in the middle of the park. He's an important physical asset for Leeds United in that midfield, and it seems likely he will pick up a yellow card in the next couple of games based on some of the tackles he put in recent weeks. But yeah, ideally, if he can keep the bib clean for at least a couple of games to get Stack back, then maybe it's not as big of an impact if he does end up picking up a yellow card. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Rangers sackings yesterday and the possible linking to the 49ers, or clarification on that situation as that story came out yesterday. Leeds owners, the 49ers enterprises, have been criticised by portions of the fan base for not being ruthless enough when it comes to the Premier League. But yesterday, the other club that they invest in, Glasgow Rangers, showed an incredible ruthless streak when they sacked chief executive and their sporting director, Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thilwell, both of them who only joined the club in the last 12 months. This made lots of pundits and journalists sit up and take notice and think that maybe the 49ers had jumped into action to sort these situations out there, and maybe even having a look at Leeds United with criticism over Leeds United's own chief executive and sporting director, and maybe an axe could fall on them before Leeds head into the January transfer window. However, despite the initial perception of this, it actually appears that the decision has been made by Rangers majority shareholder Andrew Kavanagh, as he sat down with Sky Sports and explained that decisions needed to be made at Rangers and changes were needed for the club to move forward. So although the 49ers are an investor in Glasgow Rangers and Parag Marathe is the vice chairman, they are very much a minority shareholder in the club, and the decision doesn't appear to have come directly from them. They may have supported it, but it appears that Andrew Kavanagh is the one that made the call on that. Leeds owners will face, no doubt, some very difficult decisions in the coming months, not just around the managerial situation at Leeds, but also around the inexperienced leadership team behind Daniel Farke, with Adam Underwood and Robbie Evans' performance very much in a spotlight after the transfer window has now not looked to be such a decent transfer window. They gave themselves a good 8 out of 10 when they spoke to the press after the summer window closed. It's now looking like probably about a 5 or a 6 at this point, if we're being generous. And there will be an increased spotlight on them coming into the January window as well. Robbie Evans says we've got no money to spend after that, but there is, from all the stories floating around, these are very much in the process of trying to get a upgrade done in January to the squad, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of months ahead for the ownership and what decisions they make about the entire management system, upper management as well as first team management at the club, depending on results. Right, let's move on and get into the rumour mill territory. So again, if you're not into this, back at 7 o'clock or 7:30 tonight for the podcast, but I'll clarify the Conor Gallagher rumour that's come around today. Atletico Madrid midfielder Conor Gallagher has admitted recently that he is unhappy with the game time that he is getting at Atletico Madrid and would be open to a return to the Premier League. Leeds tried to sign Gallagher when Marcelo Bielsa was in charge. They tried to get him on loan at that point, and at that stage they lost out to Crystal Palace. But Leeds are said to be considering several options in January, not just in terms of players, but in terms of squad upgrades, and several positions included, which is likely to see some current squad exits as well. Sky Sports are reporting that Leeds United have interest in Conor Gallagher in January, but they're in a queue of several Premier League clubs. 16, to be clear, top 5 clubs have been labelled as having interest in Gallagher, and that is an issue that Leeds United are going to have to deal with in January, not just in this one, but in plenty of other positions. If Leeds are still in the relegation zone come January, it's going to make it very difficult for Leeds to compete against other Premier League sides to bring in players to get them higher up the table. And Leeds are said, though, to have inquired about Gallagher during the summer, but that at that point those inquiries were dismissed by Atletico. Leeds' chances of getting Gallagher are quoted as being incredibly slim on this report, and a fee of £35 million, along with the players' interest in playing in Europe, all said to be acting against Leeds United. Leeds, as I say, are said to be planning several January changes to the squad, but it would be very tough to attract higher calibre players if they're still in the bottom three come January. If they're not in the bottom three, which is entirely possible that could also be the case, that makes it incredibly easier for Leeds United to try and attract better quality players to, again, push them even higher up the table if they can. The goal is 16th, 17th. They're in and around that right now. A couple of decent results after this block of really tough 3 games might tend to start to alleviate the position a little bit. Clubs like Fulham have got some really tough games coming up as well, so we might not be cut adrift as much as we might think right now. And again, trying to find the positive in it, which is not easy right now. If those teams can slip up as well, maybe Leeds can try and keep that gap tight and then pull away from them again, or close that gap even further, when they get the easier quote unquote fixtures coming up, which they don't get much easier coming into January, to be completely honest. There's only a handful in there that you would say you could potentially pick up points. The home games are going to be really, really important in that as well. But yeah, folks, that'll be it for me today on the news. Massive thanks as always for supporting the channel, liking, hyping, subscribing, all that good stuff. We are back tonight with the podcast. It'll be out around 7:30. You can check it out on your podcast apps if you want it there, or you can check it out on YouTube later on this evening. Outside that, have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon. See you later. Bye.